Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, very special guest as always, Tshepo Magagane, who's an investment banker who is trying to redefine African capital. Tshepo, how are you?
Thank you very much for having me, Rocco. Very good to be here.
What a time to be in finance. We just had the Pandora Papers leaking. We had the Facebook outage. So much to talk about. But what I want to focus on with you today is ESG investing, which is like this big buzzword in finance. If you can unpack that word for like the novice, let's say you're a 3-year-old on a toddler level, what is ESG investing, and maybe go into the pros and cons of it.
Thank you very much, Rocco. I think ESG investing for me is really when you are investing, whatever you do, how does it impact the world? And you make your decisions around that, And I do not class what you tend to see nowadays with all the Harvard endowment funds, the Norwegian oil fund, whereby they're disinvesting from oil and gas, coal, fossil. I do not class that as ESG investing. ESG investing is you putting money into solutions and supporting how we actually live as people, from the environmental, from a social, from a governance perspective. Is it a good idea? Obviously, it is a good idea. I love this line, Rocco, from most of my geo friends who normally say, we cannot destroy Earth, but we can make it uninhabitable for human beings.
Yeah.
I think if everyone was to sort of take that perspective, it really changes how you view, how you consume, how you live your life. And the bad parts about it, it is a good idea, but just like BE in South Africa, it's a fantastic idea, but it has been hijacked by how do I term it, vested interest, when you have very opportunistic people as well, who are coming in, you see these mega funds, these ETFs.
As well.
They have so much money and they're just trying to using it as a marketing gimmick. That's not ESG for me, not one bit.
Okay. Before we move on, you said something interesting about the Norwegian oil fund. They are, to many people, considered to be the smartest people in the room. That's debatable. Where do you see them going?
The Norwegians is quite strange. You are right, they're incredibly smart.
Yeah.
But at the very base of it, it's very hypocritical. You've generated all this trillion from fossil fuels. You continue to generate that money from fossil fuels. But you are saying to everyone else, you cannot use fossil fuels. And they're smart people, so I expect better from them. I really expect better from them. If you look at where does oil come from? Oil comes from Russia. It comes from Saudi Arabia. It comes from Nigeria. These guys need that money.
Yeah.
So you can't just tell them, you have to stop producing your oil.
Yeah.
For people that smart, I'm really worried that they take this stance.
Interesting. There's a lot of retail investors coming online now. They're sort of graduating from, they dip their toe in the water. They want to know more from the professionals. People come from, like people from you, coming from the institutions, from the GSs and the Morgan Stanleys and the whatever, turning to Reddit, trying to go to Discord and YouTube videos where you're not going to find this type of information. They hear the term ESG and they want to get involved, but how do you sort of tell a retail investor, where to look and maybe like what to go for?
For me, it's very simple. What do we need? What do we need to make that transition? We need a specific number of metals. I think the key for me for retail investors, especially when it comes to South Africa, it will be mining. It will be copper. It will be vanadium. Let me start with copper.
Yes.
There's just not enough copper out there. There's just not enough copper out there. The UK talks about moving to all electric by 2030. All electric by 2030 means that you need another Chile.
Yeah.
You need another Chile. That's just impossible. And some of the news that we are seeing, BHP Billiton, since I started doing banking, they have never looked at Africa. If they had a little bit of exposure, they sold it. That's just BHP Billiton. They never could get.
That's what traders do.
Yeah.
Generalized, but around those guys as well. That's a trader mentality.
Yeah. But amazingly now, they have changed that mentality whereby they're saying there is no copper out there. Let's look at Africa. Let's look at the DRC. The DRC, for a dual-listed Australia and UK company looking at the DRC, that is a big thing. What does it tell me? They have incredible resources to understand all the geology out there in the world.
Yeah.
There is no copper out there.
Yeah.
The grades are falling. The replacement costs are going up. I mean, you look at Las Bambas. Las Bambas used to belong to Extractor. When Extractor was being taken over by Glencore, the Chinese made a condition precedent whereby Las Bambas was to be sold to a Chinese entity for them to approve the measure.
Yeah.
And the replacement cost for that was $22,000 per ton.
Okay.
That's a lot. That is double the current price.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at South American low-grade ore. Low-grade ore, it will come in at about something like $55,000 per ton. That's 5 times the current price. So for retail investors, if you're looking at it, take a 5-10 year view.
Always.
Find all those independent copper plays. Find those diversified miners who have a lot of copper, and just put your money in there. And when it comes to other metals such as vanadium, look at long energy storage. There's a good story that I see unfolding in South Africa in Bushveld Minerals. Yes. It is a subsidiary called Bushveld Energy. Yes. These guys are, they are not playing the long energy duration play, but they had the vanadium assets. Yes. One thing about them, that the technology has been proven. It has been deployed out there. But on the mining side, they had Orion Mine Finance come in and give them cash to actually develop the mine. So from a DD perspective, someone like Orion Mine Finance, which was spun out of Redkine, this Michael Farmer.
Very good advice, because looking at the UK petrol pumps now and seeing the queues on the energy, there's definitely a shift happening. And that brings me to my another point, which I feel is something that's being overlooked. It's this major renewable news that came out of the Moroccan UK power project, where basically it's this company called Xlinks. They are building this massive facility in Morocco and putting it underneath sea cables. They're talking about something like 10.5 gigawatts being produced from wind and solar, and then 3.6 gigawatts going to the UK. I mean, that's significant. That's like 8 to 10% of their total consumption. That to me is really interesting, because now you're touching on ESG, you're touching on decarbonization, you are touching on what is perceived to be green energy, something that could be easily tokenized, maybe through other countries. I'm assuming you saw what I saw. What is your feelings here in terms of, maybe let's first go into the sort of what it is, and then the finance side separately.
Yeah, I mean, what these guys are trying to do is put this cable down that will go on all the way to Europe. This has been going on for quite some time, originating and landing in different countries, but not all the way to the UK.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems quite a really ambitious project, bearing in mind the limited power generation that will feed into this cable and justify the cost. But let's come to the cost. That's where the problem is. I'm looking at comparable renewable projects. I mean, the capital intensity will be something like 0.4 billion per gigawatt. These guys will be coming in at 2.2 billion per gigawatt. That's a lot. And a lot of this money is going to go into the cable. So do you really need to be doing that? I mean, these are the challenges that we need to speak about. Is it really necessary to spend that amount of money just putting a cable down from Africa all the way to the UK, when Africa is actually lacking in electricity? So yes, we need to solve these problems, but we must not forget about the transition risk and energy justice as well. To take all this money, it's a lot of money, Marco, 22 billion.
Yeah,
I mean, you can solve for...
But for me, it fits a narrative. It's a good story, like 1,400 job opportunities in GB, along with Brexit, whatever. But now you're taking billions, and I'm like, there's an easier way to create jobs here, right?
But it is definitely that. There's an easier way to actually take that cash and actually solve the energy crisis in Africa. Solve that. And I think when we start to do those grand projects, that's when we're really gonna mess up. Do things, try and localize them. You can have regional energy grids and so forth, but do those type of things whereby you can actually get the financing. I do not see how they're gonna get the 22 billion. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we'll still be talking about it. They would have spent 5 billion on it instead of spending that 5 billion, solving so much energy crisis in North and West Africa. So I think we have to be really careful when we think about these things in terms of what are we trying to achieve? Is it possible? Are we wasting resources?
Yeah. Before I let you go on that point, what would be an alternative to this project? Just off the cuff.
I think the alternative to this project will be localized projects. It will be regional power grids, whereby you can actually find, you can do 100 megawatts. You don't need to be doing gigawatts. 100 megawatts, it supports this particular region. You have a pool of electricity in a particular region. You have a tradable market. That's how you solve these things. Something like 100 megawatts, you can do it for $50 million US.
Yes.
You don't need to be talking about billions. So we need to be thinking about scaling down these things, trying to do the projects that are easy to execute.
But the media loves sexy numbers, right? 10 gigawatts, much sexier than 100 megawatts.
10 gigawatts, 22 billion. It's just ridiculous.
Tshepo, thank you so much for joining us today. If the people want to connect with you, where can they do that, and what are you busy with?
I mean, I'm normally on LinkedIn, but you want to connect with me. My email is quite easy. It's just Tshepo, mag@hotmail.com. I mean, what we are busy with, if you are thinking about renewables, especially on the mining side,
yes.
If you have the right project and the right commodity, we have solutions for you. I speak to a lot of funds, and when it comes to this type of renewable space, you're looking for financing. Let's have a chat.
Yeah, I will put those links in the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, rockstar investment banker Tshepo Magagane. To our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity, and we'll catch you in the next one.